To start thinking about the math of diet culture. Yeah, I'm talking about subtraction. Hey everyone, welcome to No Weight Loss Required. My name is Meegrit Fletcher. I have spent years exploring weight inclusive care and how you can manage your health without focusing on weight. In fact, actually focusing on weight too closely can really make it hard for us to engage in sustainable change. And this is because pursuing weight can often feel like we are getting distracted from what really matters, and that's enjoying food and feeling well. So, again, we want to talk about the math and how subtraction really doesn't add up. So, in this episode, we're actually going to be taking a look at the roadmap. If you haven't had a chance to check out the roadmap, please do. It's on the noweightlossrequired.substack.com website, and it's right up in the nav bar. And we're going to start with the truth about subtraction that may really surprise you. That cutting out things from your meals, from your routine, from your care is often praised as strength. But what if subtraction really isn't adding up? So, what I'd like to do is talk about the pros and cons of subtraction and if how subtraction might not actually improve your diet or your health. So let's start with the very first one. Why is subtraction so tempting? What is it about subtraction that just gets us feeling like, oh, it's got to be the way? I think the first pro about subtraction is it feels simple. You don't need a grocery list. It's nothing fancy. I mean, sure, you can track your calories if you want to, but just pulling things out of your diet, it's not really hard to do. And again, it's like, oh, I didn't have to plan anything. I just had to stop eating X. So it's often described as willpower or strength, and you might hear lots of people say, oh, I just don't eat that anymore. And it's like some sort of badge of honor, like, oh, I'm supposed to be so happy for you, when in fact, you may really like that food that they're not eating anymore. To them, they don't really care, but to you, it matters. So again, when we start kind of getting into that subtraction thing, it's easy to take away foods that we don't really care about, but it's a lot harder for us to remove foods from our diet that really have meaning or we really enjoy. And again, when you start thinking about it, when life gets uncertain, and life is always going to get, difficult, you got to really turn around and say to yourself, like, is subtraction always taking things away? Is that going to feel okay when I'm feeling a little out of balance? And the other thing is, I think one of the pros about subtraction that people really get, and I get it too, is that after you're diagnosed or you're really trying to like reduce your risk of diabetes, it's easy to kind of want to reach for that fix, like, oh, I need to fix it. And so taking something away can really feel like you're taking control. But there's a little sneaky thing about subtraction, and it doesn't actually look like a problem at first, but as it progresses, it really becomes a big problem. And so the thing is, nobody really tells you that subtraction is limited. I mean, you can't subtract food and calories and joy indefinitely from your diet. And the more you take those things away, the more you're kind of left with nothing. I mean, you're really relying on willpower at this point. I don't know if you have noticed how expensive willpower is. Sure, it may not cost anything in money, but emotionally, mentally, physically, subtracting from your diet has a really huge cost. And like I said before, when you're tired, you might turn around and say, like, oh my gosh, I just don't have enough in me to subtract anymore. And you start thinking to yourself, like, how often does my schedule get flipped? Or my routines fall apart or something happens, like, the kids or work or just me. That's when it's really hard to lean into this whole idea of subtraction. It really can't hold up when life is unpredictable or heavy. And life does get heavy, no fault of anyone's. If you're always taking away, it actually doesn't nourish you either. So I think that's kind of one of the cons of really subtraction. And it really shrinks your options. If you're always saying, like, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, I can't have that, you're really not left with a lot of variety. Your energy, your resilience, it's low because you're empty. I mean, you've subtracted everything. So again, it's really hard to care for ourselves when we feel empty. And if the plan is to kind of live with less, I don't know, that just feels like loss to me. I've been doing a lot of talking, and I think sometimes in podcasts like this, it's really helpful just to kind of have an analogy. So let's use a metaphor. So imagine that your body is the worker and your mind is the CEO. And we're going to look at this from like a business perspective. Would a smart CEO cut the amount of materials needed to do a job? I mean, if they did and you didn't actually have the materials to do your job, like, does that make sense? Wise. You can't build things if you don't have the materials to build them, right? Well, your body has a job, and your job is to keep you functioning, keeping you well, keeping your body at 98.6 degrees. And I think it's sometimes easy to forget that your body is working really hard. But this whole idea of subtracting is like you taking away the materials that your body needs to work to keep you healthy, to keep you at 98.6 degrees. And if you think about it, that's like diet culture. Like diet culture it's like a TED's talk on steroids that in 12 minutes, it can make you think you have a degree in nutrition. And diet culture really loves to blame the staff. It really loves to blame the worker when things fall apart. Why aren't you feeling well? Why aren't you keeping my body well? Why aren't you managing my blood sugars when in fact over time you've taken away all of the tools and resources that this work or your body is trying to use? I mean, you've removed meals and snacks and everything else. So how is your body going to feel? How is it going to keep up? And the other thing is when you really kind of think about it, between the mind, the CEO, and the worker, your body, can really kind of feel that tension over here. I mean, does your body feel heard, safe, respected, listened to? That tension between the two is, again, it's all these, well, the body should be able to do these things. How? How should it be able to do things if we're not giving it nutrition? And again, the math of diet culture is to take away. And we think that it's discipline to take things away. We think we're being like really have a lot of willpower and control. But really, it's not. It's kind of the opposite of that. And when we start turning around saying like, what are my other options? We start thinking about harmony, like we start thinking about the CEO and the workers talking. We're really talking about better communication. And, how do we get better communication? One of the things we want to do is we want to start eating. We want to start adding foods back into our diet so our body feels supported, so it doesn't feel micromanaged. And that's kind of the thing I want to talk about next is just, what happens when we flip this from all this subtraction and we start adding foods into our diet. And I think one of the things that happens a lot of times, people are like, well, I can add anything. Sure, you can. I mean, no one's stopping you. You're an adult. Go for it. But really what we're asking is what would add balance to this meal? And kind of a trick little thing that I like to say is focusing on color. Can I add color to this meal? Can I add texture to this meal? I focus in a lot on color and texture because it actually helps you feel more satisfied. And it's really kind of giving you a direction. You look at it and you don't have to count anything. You don't have to weigh anything. You're just turning around and saying like, oh, I'm looking at this meal visually. Could I add color? Could I add texture to this meal? What would that look like? Now, of course, I love it when people get the protein and the carbohydrates and the fats, but a lot of times diet culture is really capitalized on that. So it's hard to focus in on that without getting kind of sucked back into diet culture. And one of the things that I really like to do is talk about satiety because it really gives us pleasure, it gives us ease, it gives us that flexibility. And I think that that's really important. So many times when we think about nutrition, we forget enjoyment is part of a balanced diet. So, again, if you start thinking about this and you're saying like, oh, this sounds pretty good, liking what I'm hearing. If you want to have a personalized meal plan, there are lots of weight-inclusive dietitians at Nourish, myself included, and you can go there and meet with them and work and get an individual plan. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to preventing or managing diabetes, and that's really where it's helpful to kind of work with a dietitian to say, hey, what would work for you specifically? I also think that when you get support, it builds capacity, and that's really the key thing for sustainability. So you have the supports in place when life goes sideways, and life always goes sideways. I mean, that's just kind of what happens. So, really taking a step back and really looking at your own math. Are you always subtracting? Ask yourself that. And what would happen if you started adding things back into your diet? I mean, it's a good question. Why not? In our next episode, so the next podcast that we do, I'm going to be looking at step number 2 in the roadmap. And this conversation is really about learning about diabetes. I mean, so many times my clients come in and they think they're supposed to know, and everything about diabetes is changing. There's so much information out there, and really turning around and saying, like, at some point I have to learn about diabetes and what does that look like? And have I given myself permission to actually talk with somebody who knows? So you, of course, if you sign up for the No Weight Loss Required newsletter, go to my website, tons of resources already there. I am a registered dietitian. I am a certified diabetes care and education specialist. I'm really here to help you learn about good diabetes care, no weight loss required. So I hope you'll go check it out. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you found this episode helpful, and I'll see you soon.